All right, welcome everybody back to the PHLY Sixers podcast. I'm Derek, joined today by Rich, and I'm happy that we have Rich in the studio today because I think one of the cool things about PHLY, there's a lot of cool things, but one of the cool things is that we can sort of like be open fans about other teams more than we could maybe at the Athletic. And Rich and I both obviously grew up in Philadelphia. I think we have trained ourselves not to be a fan so much of the Philadelphia 76ers. If they make a title run, you will not see videos of Rich and I reacting like Jamie was last night. But with the other three teams, and the Phillies and Eagles pretty specifically, we get to be a little bit more fans than maybe we used to. And to be able to sit here, and Rich now is obviously writing about all four teams with the daily newsletter. Go sign up, allphly.com. That is free. You don't have to be a subscriber for that. But Rich gets to write about all the teams. We both get to be maybe fans a little bit of the team. We were watching the Game 3 here in the studio the other day as we were preparing for our show. And we get to be a little more open about the fact that, yes, we're from Philadelphia. We love sports, and we happen to root for these teams. So it is good to have you in studio and talk about what was a pretty epic last 2 days here in South Philadelphia. And I know I joked on Twitter that we would only talk about the Phillies on this show. That's not true. We are a Sixers podcast. We will talk about the Sixers as well. But just a quick reaction to what we've seen.
Amazing, right? And I don't think I've ever seen a Philadelphia sports team like these Phillies that, pretty average regular season team, like not crazy good, but they're just gamers, man. And, watching them beat the Braves the second year in a row, watching the Braves just melt down.
It really is. The Braves, 101 wins last year, 104 this year, lost in the divisional series both years in a row. Watching another great regular season team fail in the playoffs and have all that angst that come with that, and also be a longtime rival of the Phillies and at the hands of the Phillies, it's fantastic, man. I've loved that.
Think about the Philadelphia-Atlanta sports relationship where, when the Eagles win the Super Bowl, the Falcons really could have ended that. Nick Foles would not have been the folk hero if the Falcons had like a decent red zone offense. They could get the ball in from the 1 yard line. The Phillies have just broken the Braves' hearts the last couple of years, and the Sixers lost to Trae Young.
Yes, not quite the same. We're trying to be optimistic here to start, though, Rich. We're going to talk about the Phillies just real briefly. It is just from a cast of characters, from the way Castellanos was struggling last year to the way Turner was struggling to start this year, to the way he came up. I mean, both of them came up. Turner, the first Philly player to have 4 hits in a postseason game in franchise history. They're a freaking old franchise. That's an amazing stat. Castellanos, the first multi-homer games, 2 games in a row. For both of them to go from GOAT to hero or overpaid to hero. I mean, if you go back to July, there were people who wanted to undo the Trey Turner contract after a couple of months' struggles. It shows, and we're going to sort of like try to loop this back into the Sixers. It does show that if you want to change a narrative, you just have to have those defining moments. You just have to have that. We're idiots. And by that, I don't mean me and Rich, although we can be idiots too.
I'm pretty stupid.
But like, we have to churn out, we are, but like, I'm trying to save us. We have to churn out content every day. Sports Talk Radio has to churn out content every day. With that is going to come some quick takes. And I think Rich and I have tried to, throughout the course of our career, try to not do that, to avoid those trappings of, just the constant content machine. And I think people who've probably been longtime listeners realize we try very hard to do that. But it's inevitable. Like every now and then you get caught up in the moment. If you want to change that narrative, all you have to do is have defining moments in the playoffs. And I've seen a lot of, we had multiple conversations with the Sixers, with people at the Sixers. Oh, who cares if we keep losing in the second round? If we lost in the finals, it would be different. No, it freaking wouldn't. And this Phillies team is proof positive of that. They didn't win a World Series last year. There was no parade. But the fact that they had, like I said, signature moments that helped you relate to the players on the team. They've beaten good teams now, which the Sixers have never done. This, like I've had some people with the team try to paint this as like, why is Philly not appreciative of us? Fucking win. Like, it's really not like win, show emotion, achieve in big spots, overachieve against better teams. You've not beaten a better team. It's not rocket science. It's just not like beating the freaking Toronto Raptors without Kawhi is not going to be a signature defining moment.
No, it's not. And I think you've hit on a good point here in that.
Eugene in the chat, Cassie would have locked Tatum up. Absolutely. He doesn't drop 50 in that game. Absolutely.
Well, Cassie would have had a short memory if Tatum, hit a couple threes on him. He would have just kept going.
The way he turned the tide, two straight games with those bombs. Like both of those games, you went, oh no. Braves jumped out to a big lead, or not a big lead, an early lead. They have that monster offense, and he just immediately answered. It was amazing.
I get 2 dingers off of Elder, like kind of, or I guess the second one was against the reliever, but kind of a soft throwing righty to hit the ball out of the ballpark on Spencer Strider twice. Like I think it was the first 100-mile-per-hour fastball that has ever gone out against Spencer Strider. It was kind of a remarkable performance. Eric in the chat said that the Phillies are the MLB Heat. I agree with this. I have privately made this take for a long time. Free shirt idea for anybody. A Phillies culture shirt.
Yes.
Needs to go out there. But you're absolutely right, man. And I think the way we started the process, which, was championship or bust, right? The goal is, if you're not first, you're last. And, you're bottoming out to try and win a championship. And that is true. But over the past couple of years, I think we have learned that it's not necessarily championship or bust. That there are degrees of losing. And the Phillies, again, they have not won a title yet, but they have had big moments against great teams. And the Sixers just have not done that. And I really felt like how the Sixers lost to Boston, it was almost like, a second round exit would have been bad. If they lost another Kawhi Toronto game to Boston in Game 7, I'm sorry. I think differently about this team than them just going out completely sorry. And, Joel after the game basically says, who cares about the second round? We didn't win the championship. It's the same thing. No, man, it's not actually. You need to advance. You need to beat a good team. And it's like you said, we've always said this about Joel. He's done so many good things. You just got to do it at some point.
Yeah. No, look, go back to midway through last year, right? Phillies had missed the playoffs for a decade, spent a whole bunch of money. And what were they? Like at one point last year, they were a 500. When they fired Girardi, what was their record? Like right around 500. That's not going to get it done. Like that was a huge disappointment. These are teams that had multiple September collapses. Now, obviously, a lot of the players changed, but some of the core was still there. They rewrote the narrative as hard as you can rewrite the narrative. They went from chokers, and if you look back at Bryce's Washington career, there wasn't a belief that he could get it done in the playoffs. They went from underachievers and chokers who couldn't build a team and couldn't stop stepping on their own feet to maybe the best playoff performers we can remember. Like you said, the Miami culture, Philadelphia Phillies, Heat culture, Philadelphia Phillies, in the span of 15 months. You just need moments that captivate a fan base and overachieve in the biggest moments. And that's not going to happen every year. It's not going to happen for the Phillies team every year. That's going to happen. It needs to happen once or twice over the span of a career, and it just hasn't happened yet. And you can tell me, second round is the same as losing in the finals. No, because getting the finals, you have to beat a good freaking team. Like you can't beat the the sub 500 or right at 500 Washington Wizards. You have to beat a good team. You need a moment.
Randy in the chat saying that the Sixers, they lost Game 6. That's when they lost the series. Completely agree. But that's also the moment that the Sixers could have seized, And after that game, Joel's like, the ball didn't find me afterwards. And that's just also maddening. Like at some point, you just have to seize that moment. And as much as we can talk about the X's and O's and who's guarding who, rotations, all of those things, but you just have to do it. You just have to win in a big spot.
This isn't rocket science.
And it's unbelievable that the Sixers have had this many chances, and they have never had one of those moments. So
Nolan in the chat asking, weren't the Phillies 10 under at one point last year? I just checked. It looks like the low water mark was 8 under on May 31st. From what I can tell, I might be missing.
But Joe Girardi was their manager, so that doesn't count.
Right. Well, and 6-7 new coach. We'll see. No, it is. The last couple of days have been fantastic. I really want to try to get down to Citizens Bank Park, and it really is like the best, home field advantage in baseball. And it seems like the players feed off of that a little bit. It's an absolutely amazing atmosphere. And even last night, and look, there were some tight moments last night. Oof. Like walking the bases loaded, right down to the final pitch of the ninth inning. Like there were some real tight moments. That's a game. Playoff baseball is so different than playoff basketball. Whereas, Game 7 against the Celtics, like you could feel that tide building and building and building. And the next thing you know, it was just completely out of control. baseball, like you were one pitch away from that game changing on a dime. It reminds me a lot of soccer or hockey in that regard. I'm not a biggest fan of those two sports, but I get the tension, especially because my brother's a real big hockey fan. But you can feel the tension that the game can shift at any moment. Baseball's a lot like that, and it is just a wild moment. And again, to see them come through like that, I mean, the pitching performances that you've had, like there's going to be a lot of focus on the offense and the historic accomplishments from, like we said, Castellanos and Turner and what Harper's doing. Nola's game, the bullpen. I mean, what did the bullpen give? Like a sub-2 ERA to the best offense in the league. It's been an unbelievable performance up and down. And even Topper, like you gave him a little grief last night about some of his decisions. They've worked out. You don't know whether or not that makes them the right decisions or whether the players just rose to the moment. But they've pulled all the right buttons, and it's been fun to watch.
It's a lot of fun. I am going to game 2.
Okay. Good for you.
Very excited about that. I have not been to a playoff game.
You got a spare ticket?
I don't.
Okay. I'd ask.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, the Phillies are just...
You can tell we've been colleagues for a long time, but clearly not friends. A friend would have a spare ticket.
Ouch. So, yeah, they're just gamers. And I guess to bring it back to the Sixers, like, I just want this fan base to have one of these playoff runs, you know? Like, I just want to see, even though we are not rooting for the team in the, same way we are rooting for the Phillies, like, I just want to see the fans actually happy and just not have this happen to them every single time.
And like, again, we might have had the fandom beaten out of us because we had to be in order to be successful journalists, especially with where we were. But my brother's a huge basketball fan. I've got a lot of fans right here in the chat. I know a lot of people that love Sixers basketball.
I like to see my friends happy.
I like to see my friends happy. And oh, by the way, there's probably more you watching our show if you're happy too. So like, yes, we would like them to win. It's a little different, but it has been, I've said this before, but like my last true, like unencumbered fandom was that 2007 to 2011 Phillies run. And for them to kind of like rekindle that and respark that, it's been really fun to watch.
I think too, if you look at this Phillies team, like I made the joke about Phillies culture before, but they certainly have a core group of players who really like playing with each other, who clearly have short memories, who love celebrating with each other. And like, can the Sixers take a ton from that? No, it's kind of hard to replicate, I would say. The issue right now is that James Harden is here and there's no way to replicate that culture. But, I think the hope is that you do it with Joel and Tyrese at some point, right? You get them as your tentpole stars and you just try and build that way. But the Sixers are a long way away from that, and they're probably a James Harden trade away from that.
We've got Rick up there in the chat offering me a Game 1 ticket. Clearly a better friend than the guy that I've worked with for a decade.
Oh, come
on. I apologize, Rick. I appreciate the offer very much. I cannot.
Rick said he may have a spare ticket.
You said you didn't, so I like Rick more than you. But no, I will not. I cannot take you up on that in good conscience, but I appreciate the offer very much. All right, so I think we're going to have a little bit more on maybe that Phillies-Sixers connection. But before that, a word from a couple of our sponsors. First, I want to tell you about Soul Savvy. Now, look, I am not the biggest sneakerhead in the group. That is clearly Kyle, but I'm always looking for good deals on shoes. And Soul Savvy has been around since 2018, and their mission has always stayed the same. Get sneakers into the hands of people who love them most. Soul Savvy is a sneaker community that operates in Canada, the United States, and the UK. It has 3 basic membership levels. Basic, which is free, Mobile Plus $12, and Premium at $33. And the Premium membership includes Mobile Plus features. For the casual sneaker buyer, you can sign up for the basic plan and gain access to their one-of-a-kind marketplace built for you, not for resellers. Well, Mobile Plus is for the sneakerhead who is always on the go. You can build a rotation of sold-out sneakers straight from your phone. Premium you get is a sneakerhead who is tired of paying resale. Find your grails and grow your collection in the world's biggest paid sneaker community. Once again, head on over to... hold on. 1 second. I lost a bit.
Smooth, man.
I completely lost. All right. My apologies for Soul Savvy.
So
hold on. Okay, sign up for Soul Savvy by visiting soulsavvy.com/allcity or by downloading the Drops by Soul Savvy app. Once again, sign up for Soul Savvy by visiting soulsavvy.com/allcity or downloading the Drops by Soul Savvy app. All right, and then one more. Hold on. From DraftKings. And DraftKings, again, there's a lot going on with baseball, a lot to really talk about. Things are heating up in the ballpark. Quite literally, we saw that last night. Every team is playing to finish the season strong and make it to the playoffs. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you won't miss a moment of the baseball action. New customers can score $2,000 instantly, can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on baseball. Plus, all customers can take a crack at a sweet payday with DraftKings same-game parlays. String together multiple bets from a single game for your shot at a major payout. So what are you waiting for? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code PHLY. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on baseball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code PHLY. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner of Golden Nugget Lake Charles, Louisiana, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See dkng.co/baseball for eligibility terms and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. I guess my only real suggestion for the Sixers is it's really if you want to win the fans over, just win. It's not nearly as complicated as make it out to be.
Yep. So we did get the beauty of doing live YouTube here is we do get some additional content at times. And if you look, Kyle just put up a video. James Harden
speaking at practice.
And from Kyle, I'm not watching the whole video. Obviously, we're doing the podcast, but Kyle put it up. When I got traded here, my whole thing was I wanted to retire a Sixer. This is James Harden talking. I wanted to be here and retire a Sixer. And the front office didn't have that in their future plans. Noah Levick from NBC Sports, he tweeted that Harden said the relationship between him and the front office is beyond repair.
Yep.
So, I think pretty honest stuff there from James, where he's he's not mincing words here. He's clearly still very unhappy with the front office. Noah Levick also pointed out that Harden said he's still ramping up and intends to play in the preseason finale and beyond that. So we'll have to take a look at those comments.
So that would be next Friday, a week from today?
That would be next Friday. And in general, beyond that, I'm assuming that means in Milwaukee in a couple weeks?
Yeah. I guess. Look, I don't think anybody really knows. It seems like he's going to play because he believes that playing well is maybe the best way for him to get traded. But it could change in hour to hour. And he also said, Harden, in terms of the situation, it was mostly that it was just about losing trust in someone. You lose trust in someone, you know what I mean? It's pretty simple. He compared it to a marriage. Look, there's still a part of me that thinks that if there's a GM that's going to give him a good contract, it might be Daryl Morey. He might, if you're talking about being pragmatic, it might be for his benefit to look. I don't know.
Yeah. It just goes to show it's so weird that he's, going through hard workouts after practice when he clearly doesn't want to be here. And, I know Maxey, did you see him on JJ's podcast?
I have not listened to that yet, no.
I definitely saw the clip, and Maxey was basically saying, for these core guys, me, Joel, Tobias, Danny Green, who came back, he's like, this is the second time we've done this, so
right.
it's kind of normal for us or whatever. But I'm just watching, even if it's not weird and Harden is being quote unquote professional and at least giving a decent effort during practice, even though he's not happy, I still just think the thing is so freaking weird.
Yeah, everything about it is weird. Everything, and the fact that this broke down between these two people is weird. The fact that James reacted so emotionally to it is so weird. The fact that he opted in, I don't even really to this point know entirely why he opted in. And the fact that this can't be mended. Like, there have been worse things that have happened than a GM, not communicating with a player leading up to free agency because he wanted to, leverage him into a better contract. Like, this is not the biggest breach of trust in the world, but Harden views it as that. The whole thing is weird. All right. So do we have any more quick thoughts on Harden? Because I'm not really sure that too much of that changes too much of where we're at, other than him confirming basically that this can't be repaired. And again, could 2 months, could his opinion change? Maybe. He sort of has to present it as this can't be repaired if he wants to be traded, and we know he still wants to be traded. So that's sort of like what you would expect him to say. But it is interesting that he addressed the media.
Yeah, and I wonder if he's starting to normalize relations with the Sixers here, where he's going to be unhappy, but he's going to do media. He's going to play in some games, and he realizes, okay, maybe I'm not going to get out of here that fast. And it's like, I see in the chat, well, who cares what he says? It's like, you're right. If he does play, that's all that really matters. And, he can be as cold as he wants. Like, he could average 20 and 10, and after every game, he could just be like, yep, still don't like Daryl Morey. I don't know why I'm doing here. Trade me. That would be okay. But I do think what he says can sometimes be an indicator of what he's actually going to do in terms of playing and effort and those things. And, I think we said it the other night. It's just like, we'll see what happens tomorrow. It's like, it's very much a day-to-day thing at this point.
Yep. Yeah, it is. All right. So in terms of the Phillies Sixers, I'm not sure I necessarily have too much more to go on there. There was a report from ESPN, basically that the Clippers are looking to, flip their 2028 unprotected first-round pick for multiple picks, and seeing whether or not that can entice the Sixers. I guess, what was sort of like your overall read on that?
My read on that is that they're just spinning their wheels right now, where, the Clippers, they are, Woj getting this information, and I'm sure it's true. He's kind of the person that teams sometimes negotiate through. And I think the Clippers, when they say, okay, we're only willing to give up that one unprotected first-round pick, I find it a little hard to believe they will go to another team, use only that pick, and get something that Daryl Morey wants more. Yeah. Especially when it's like, maybe they can get two kind of protected picks instead of that one valuable unprotected pick. I don't think they're making any progress, is my point with that. Right. It's just like, are you going to add more stuff? Because it seems like that is Daryl's negotiating point right now. And, I think that as much as they can shop that pick around the league and then go back to the Sixers, do you want this? Would this interest you? I think the answer to that is probably going to be no for the most part. And, we're at a point right now where everybody's undefeated. Whatever type of start the Clippers have that will entice them to get James Harden, it has not happened yet. And, so I think right now they're kind of negotiating, seeing if they can buy low for Harden or just hold to their price, which I don't blame them doing, but I also don't see a lot of progress being made because we know Daryl's going to ask for a lot.
And look, there's no real reason for the Clippers to put everything they can into a trade offer right now. There's one team bidding for James Harden. You don't bid against yourself. It's the, negotiating one-on-one. The Sixers just do not have the leverage to get two unprotected Clippers picks and Terrence Mann. They just don't have the leverage right now to do it. So Clippers are like, look, one unprotected pick from us isn't good enough for you. Let's see if we can flip that and maybe a pick swap into two picks. And I've seen some people compare this, like basically, trading 2 dimes and a nickel for a quarter, or trading a quarter for 2 dimes and a nickel. It's not quite the same because with these picks, different GMs can value them differently. Like, nobody's has differing values of a dime. That's just not how currency works. That's the whole point of currency. But GMs might have differing values of, basically how much you're willing to short the Clippers' future. They might project that differently. Some might look at it and say, well, Kawhi's old and PG's old and Harden's old. So that pick in 28 has a lot of value because they could fall off a cliff. Others will say, well, Los Angeles usually doesn't fall off a cliff because if they have cap space, there will be somebody that wants to go there either because they're going home or because they love the climate or the business opportunities, or they just want to play in LA. So I don't believe that you're actually going to bottom out. I don't value that pick, both because it's not going to bottom out and also because it's, 5 years into the future. So there's people who will have different evaluations of all that. Clippers are basically saying like, all right, look, Daryl is saying that he doesn't believe that pick will have a lot of trade value in the future. Let's try to flip these, find a team that is willing to short our future so he can get more picks back and he will value that more. Is that going to happen? I don't truthfully know. It still seems a little unlikely that there's going to be a team that's going to have such a drastic, because again, he's not making that projection that I don't value that Clippers pick too much for himself. He's not making that draft pick in 2028. He doesn't really care how good that pick is going to be. He cares about how the league projects that pick is going to be. So unless you find like one team that just drastically overvalues that pick or has a different valuation of that pick, it seems surprising to me whether or not this would actually end up working out. You know, I've seen some people say like, are they actually trying to do? No, I think the Clippers are actually trying to make this happen. Because I think they want to get this deal done, but they don't want to give up any more of their assets. And by that, I mean that 2030 pick and man. But it would be surprising to me if it happens in the next week or even month.
One of the other bargaining chips that the Clippers have is they could go after somebody else too. And Woj has mentioned, he reported this. I think the Clippers' view of it is we prefer James Harden. We're willing to offer more for James Harden, but Malcolm Brogdon does loom as kind of a pivot point. I will say, like, comparing those two players and what the Clippers need, James Harden is a way better fit there.
Yeah.
Like Malcolm Brogdon, the Clippers' issue is that they need more of a pure point guard. They need a little bit more of a passer, get them into their offense. And Malcolm Brogdon is not that guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the report says that they value Harden more than Brogdon, so that tracks. But if they get to the point where it's like, all right, Daryl's not willing to negotiate, he's not willing to, come down on his asking price. We want to get a point guard in here sooner rather than later. We feel like Daryl's going to, drag his feet until the trade deadline. That's a potential pivot point, but it probably wouldn't happen soon. I think they do have their heart set on Harden.
Here's a good question in the chat from 2 Minute Warning. Do you think the Clips need Harden more? Or do you think it's okay if we don't trade him because he will just come off the cap? And that's kind of like, that's something I've wondered about a little bit. What is Morey's ideal scenario here? Is it a Harden trade or for him to play hard the entire year? Because, yeah, if he plays hard.
I think his preference is to play hard the entire year.
Play hard the entire year because the cap space will be kind of the asset that we'll use next summer. Is that how he views it? Because it's just like.
I think he would even prefer to have Harden here. Like, I think if Harden gets to the point where he's on this team before the trade or after the trade deadline, he has two options. He can go completely nuclear and just lose his mind. It's in play. But at that point, he can't be traded, and the Sixers are the only team that have his bird rights. So the only way he could then get paid is if they sign and trade deal next offseason. And if you remember back to the CBA, there's like acquiring a player in a sign and trade could subject you to that hard cap. So his trade market's going to be lower. His earning potential is probably going to be lower. If he's on his team after the trade deadline, there's a very real scenario where his best chance to get a sizable payday is still with the Sixers. Now, does he then come back to the table? Does he, throw basically a tantrum? I have no idea. But I think Daryl would look at it and say, look, if we can get James to play hard all season, that's the best outcome. I just don't know if you can trust him to do that if you keep him on the roster after the trade deadline.
You're scaring everybody, though, by mentioning James Harden being here past this year.
Yeah. Well, look, I think Daryl would do it. And especially, like, if you look at some of the free agents, all right, Drew Holiday was a potential person they could have signed. You expect he's going to stay in Boston. PG and Kawhi, they're the two big names, but if the Clippers trade for James Harden, well, you figure they're probably. The thought of them leaving LA is still wild to me. Like, they really want to be there. I can't imagine that happening, but who knows?
They also could be bad in a couple of years.
They could definitely be bad.
Both those guys can be hurt, and they could be. So, I mean, that 2028 pick that's not nothing, I don't think. And I understand LA is a draw. Steve Ballmer is the richest guy in the NBA. I think even though this new CBA has kind of been built to stop the high spending teams like the Clippers, I get all that stuff. They could just be bad though. At some point, like when you have two old guys who don't play, like I could definitely see a season.
Yeah, no, I prefer. I prefer guys in their prime who do play, but old guys who don't play, that's particularly bad. That's particularly bad. All right, I think we're going to try to get Kyle up here on a report from the training facility. Before that, a quick word from another one of our sponsors, and hopefully this one goes a tiny bit better. This one with Game Time. And again, Rich mentioned he has tickets to Game 2. I would love to try to get in on that. If you're going to do that, you really want to be able to see the seat that you're buying because, quite frankly, you're going to be spending a small fortune. I looked right now. It's only, I think the cheapest tickets are about $360 on the Game Time app. That's way less than I was expecting. I would guess that as we get closer to the event, that's going to go up. You want to know what you're buying, and Game Time is the place to do that. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Game Time is the place for last-minute tickets. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, I think we have Kyle here ready to go.
What's up, fellas? You hear me?
Get an update from Kyle here on the whole Harden saga. You spoke to Harden today at practice. What was your overall takeaway?
Can't hear you, buddy.
You guys hear me now? Yeah,
Yep,
I think
we
I
can
got
hear you.
unmuted by whoever's producing over there. It was a little bit chaotic, as you might expect. I got a tip slightly before practice that this might happen and that there are some people maybe around the league at the league level expecting James to talk. And I don't know that we got a ton of additional clarity, but I would say the headline for me coming out of it is that James was definitive in saying this will not be repaired between him and Daryl, that the trust is not coming back, and he might end up playing for the team just because that's the best thing for him to do in terms of staying in shape and supporting his teammates and what have you. But this does not sound like a partnership that is going to last too much longer. And I think he is talking and acting like a guy who's counting down the days until he moves on.
So I guess like my thing is, in order to be traded, that's sort of the stance he has to take, is that this cannot be repaired.
Yeah.
You were there. You got to hear the inflection in his voice. You got to see his body language. How do you believe he is out?
Yeah, I mean, he definitively said, no, it can't be repaired. He said he's going to do everything he can do in order to play for the team, or in order to be ready to play basketball, I should say. That he's still committed to his craft. We saw him go through probably 25 to 30 minutes of post-practice workouts today. As we've noted on the show several times, looks to be in very good shape. But, the overarching theme was that he feels betrayed by someone he had a decade-long relationship with. Came out and said, look, like when I came to Philadelphia, I wanted to retire a Sixer, and the front office did not have that in their plans. I did also ask him specifically if there are people beyond Daryl that he has an issue with right now, and didn't really indicate that there's anyone else that he has a problem with. So, I mean, read into that what you want, that this could just be the two-man conflict and the broken trust conflict between the two of them. But it seems to be hurt enough by how this has been handled, and had said things along the lines of, I got to do what's best for my family, which I think the three of us would all agree that's an indication that he's going for as much money and as many years as he can possibly get, which we all kind of assumed already. But yeah, it was good clarity, but it was not a positive update in terms of what the Sixers, I think, were hoping for, which is this guy's can be bought in and maybe they can mend the fences eventually. He does not sound like a guy who's mending the fences. I can't hear you guys now, by the way.
Oh, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay. Doesn't matter. I was just being snarky. Anyway, so was there a date set on when he might play? We heard Friday. There's a possibility.
I mean, he could play Monday. He used the words ramp up again, which we've heard that. Derek and I certainly throughout training camp in Colorado heard, yeah, he's ramping up, he's ramping up, he's ramping up. Nick Nurse was asked about this, and James certainly was asked about it during his availability. That this is a day by day process is the thing that we continue to hear. So some of that might be physical. I think some of it is just what does he legally have to do in order to avoid fines? I think a big part of why he spoke today, honestly, is that if he didn't, there was maybe some pressure at the league level that this might be time to get some punishment for that. So I think some of this is going to depend on the guidance that James and his representation are getting from people at the league level, and certainly whatever they're hearing from the Sixers. So I would not rule out Monday's game against Brooklyn, but as you guys know, this could change in an hour, let alone a day from now.
So a little less important than the Harden news, but was there any update on House or Korkmaz?
No, it sounded like both could maybe play on Monday. Obviously, wouldn't be as big a deal as you point out as Embiid or James suiting up. But yeah, it sounds like they're both progressing. I think the words they've been using or the language they've been using for House is that it's all precautionary. It's more of a tendonitis thing. And since it's the preseason, they're not going to push him basically at all. I think they were expecting more from Ferk today, at least based on what they had said yesterday, but that he might be back in the mix tomorrow, and then we'll see where he's at Sunday, Monday.
And Joe? Any word on it?
Joe, we didn't even get to because once the Harden stuff, became the center of the day, somehow you forget the 7-foot MVP guy who's there, and so it's a little chaotic today to say the least. But the headline would be James Harden is still not happy, still isn't talking to Daryl Morey, and this could be as volatile as he wants it to be. But I would say, based on talking to him, it was a very candid. He talked to us for 6 or 7 minutes. I was expecting maybe, you guys have done James Harden media availabilities. Most of the time it's 2 minutes and out. He's pretty blunt and straight and to the point. And so for him to be that open about it and talk for that long, I thought was pretty significant. So I think he got his message across, and now it's left for Daryl Morey and the executives out in LA and maybe some other teams to figure out if they can put together a trade for this guy.
Kyle, I'm curious. I've read some of the quotes, but you're talking to Nick Nurse every day. How do you think he is handling this? How is he approaching kind of this weird kind of state of flux where he has a guy who, by all accounts, is practicing and, ramping up the biggest ramp you've ever seen, but also clearly doesn't want to play for his team?
Yeah, so here's the weird thing about all of this, and this actually came up during James's avail. He seems to be a pretty big Nick Nurse fan. I know that they met over the summer, and I think they met prior to free agency and the trade requests and all that even happening, that there were some conversations between the two. He called him a really smart, versatile coach today and said that, there have been no issues with him. So I think based on what's happening on the practice floor, Tyrese actually just talked about this on an interview he did with JJ Redick this week. He said, not only is James playing hard from like an individual perspective, but he's going up to, guys like Ricky Council, two-way players, and saying, this is where you need to be for this play or, this defensive setup or whatever it is. And so I don't think Nick has any issues with him as it stands right now. Now, it has made him essentially have two different plans for the season, one with James, one without him. He was asked a question today to the effect of, do you know what your rotation looks like? And he almost just laughed at it. Like, of course not. You can't really know what your rotation's going to be when one of the biggest pieces of the team is completely in flux and all that. So, yeah, I don't think that there are any problems that James is causing for Nick. So I think he has embraced having him for as much as he has him. That the question is just, will he ever be playing for him in a game rather than just, yeah, he's on the practice floor, but he's going to hold out as long as possible.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, keep on covering that team. Good luck with availability today. It sounds like never a dull moment with this squad.
Some transcribing ahead, and obviously we'll have something on this on allphly.com in a little bit. So I'll leave the rest of it to you two. Catch you guys later.
Sounds good. It's freaking team, man. It's never boring. Never straightforward, never boring, never normal, never.
He again referenced the Maxey on the JJ podcast. The other part of that clip that was funny was Maxey said, I wasn't exactly expecting, James to actually like play kind of hard and practice and do stuff. And JJ stopped him and he's like, well, you didn't expect it because last time it was Ben who was practicing with the cell phone in his pocket and getting kicked out of practice. So yes, if that was your prior expectation.
Which is funny that JJ said that because Ben went on the JJ Redick podcast and explained that it wasn't a cell phone in his pocket. And apparently JJ didn't believe him. Wasn't a very convincing story, I guess. No, look, it's and also because the last two times James Harden has asked out, he hasn't practiced or played hard. Like this is a different script. I think it might be a little bit of an acknowledgement, a small one, that the market isn't as wide and as strong as it used to be for him, and he's got to actually like prove to people that he's worth investing in.
Harden is such a funny one because on the one hand, like obviously his off-court habits have not been perfect in his career. That's a little bit of understatement probably, but also, it clearly has not affected him, reaching the highest levels of basketball, not a championship, but obviously individually about as good as you can get. Winning an MVP, a couple scoring titles, I believe. He loves playing basketball and I get it. He loves playing it in his James Ball type of way, but in terms of like getting better individually, he's as good as it gets.
Oh yeah.
And that is the big difference between him and Simmons. I don't think Ben likes playing basketball.
You don't get as skilled as James Harden did without working hard. But it's a little bit like Allen Iverson. It's a little bit like Joel Embiid, where, you like the parts that you like, and you don't necessarily focus on all, like you're not a complete stickler for details of perfect diet, of perfect off-court sleep and rehabilitation habits, of perfect cardio habits and keeping yourself in the best possible shape you can. If you could mix their interest and love of skill development with maybe like LeBron's attention to detail, I don't think we would be having the same conversation about James Harden. But each person is a unique person, I suppose.
Well, he would have gotten paid a big contract if he had LeBron's attention to detail on some of those.
It's a little bit of shame. Like these are the kind of players who like they're good enough. And like you mentioned, I think they do care about the game, but they maybe just, especially when you get to the top of the top of the top, or when you talk about aging gracefully into your mid-30s, that attention to detail becomes just a little bit more important. And you can get to a certain level without having it because you are great and talented and love the game. But it's just, I think some people maybe realize that a little too late in their career. But what are you going to do? All right, let's get to, we had a couple of mailbag questions here that we will get to in a bit. But before that, a quick word from FOCO, which again, you're going to want all kinds of knickknacks, of souvenir, of gear that you're going to want to have for this Phillies run. Go check out FOCO. FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise, the product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms, and with it being football and tailgating season, not to mention the Phillies run, it means overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game, FOCO has. FOCO has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use a promo code PHLY for 10% off. So we had a couple of mailbag questions here. Let me pull them up.
Real quick, let's plug those Attaboy shirts that.
Well, I was actually going to do that. We had a question about the Phillies in there, but yes, we have a fantastic new Attaboy t-shirt up at PHLYlocker.com. If you're watching on video, it is now up on the screen. Just a truly iconic moment that came out of, I don't want to say nowhere, because where it came out of has been very heavily debated. Actually, we had a pretty good debate. We'll finish off the Attaboy. Go to PHLYlocker.com, get the Attaboy t-shirt. It's in reference to Orlando Arcia, basically celebrating the clubhouse, saying "Attaboy Harper" as they got doubled off to end game 2 there. And then Bryce just completely staring him down, which is one of the most iconic photos and iconic moments we've had there in quite some time. Fantastic shirt. I love it in the powder blue. I was wearing a powder blue hat yesterday. Today I've got my 2008 World Series championship hat on. I'm maybe putting the cart before the horse, but I'm getting a little excited. But again, PHLYlocker.com. Fantastic shirt. I've ordered one myself with my own money, by the way, not an employee gift. So great shirt.
Pretty good. And thank you to Jake Mintz and Orlando Arcia for giving us that that moment.
So here, Kyle and I talked about this. There's been a lot of debate over whether or not that should have been reported. And again, this is something that Arcia was screaming in the locker room multiple times while reporters were allowed in the locker room. And there has been a sanctity of the locker room debate.
That is such a Braves thing.
Would you have reported that?
I might not have reported it, but I don't think it's that's kind of a me thing. Like the idea that got reported to me, it's fair game, man.
Yeah.
Like I think, look, when you go into a locker room, there are a lot of off the record conversations where whether you are talking to a player or two players are talking to each other, there's a lot of things where you might hear it and I'd say, you know what, that's not for publication.
Right. Like if a player's going through a slump and he's talking to another player about like how it's impacting him or like the mental stress it's putting on him, maybe there's something in his personal life that's contributing to it. You just go, all right, I'm not reporting that unless he wants it out there. If a guy's screaming it multiple times when reporters are in the room, that's like the equivalent of a hot mic. It's not even a hot mic because you know that mic is on. You can't get mad that the mic like if I say some dumbass comment right now, I can't get mad. I know there's a mic here. I know it's broadcasting live right now. I understand the concept of microphones. Reporters are in there for a very small amount of time. Like, what do we get after a game? 15 minutes in the locker room, maybe 20? If you want to celebrate and say stuff that could be bulletin board material, don't say it in that 15 or 20 minutes.
Don't scream it too. If you were screaming it, you are playing with fire in a way that it's just really stupid. And that's when I knew the Phillies had the Braves. When the Braves are getting mad about the media.
Did you see Arcia last night responding to the fans?
Yeah,
he lost. He lost his cool.
And I mean, look, that series was about a lot of things. Obviously, the Phillies did a great job. The Braves melted down. That was like as weak of a mental series as I have ever seen. They're yelling about the clubhouse. They're yelling about the media. They're complaining about the format being unfair. Like, just play better. Just beat the Phillies. And they couldn't do it. So, no, I think that was fair game. And I appreciate Jake Mintz for reporting that because we have these great shirts on PHLYlocker.com.
Yep. And by the way, the two reporters that reported it, Fox Sports and the Washington Post. Like, I know there's been some talk like, oh, these are fans with... No, these are professional Big J journalists. Like, stop. All right, let's get to the mailbag here. This one from Ross Cohen. He says that he had hoped that with a new coach that perhaps Furkan might get a look as a semi-useful rotation piece. Basically, he's asking whether or not we think Furk will get significant minutes or useful minutes or whether he is destined for garbage time.
I think he's destined for garbage time.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, like they are, if James Harden ends up not like holding out and they're short on wings, if enough things change, will he have moments in the season where he's getting useful minutes? Probably. But like as a game 1 to game 82, no, I guess he's probably on the outside of the rotation.
I've mentioned how much I enjoy Point Furk, even if it's not something you want a championship team to have him be the backup point guard. Furk's got to make threes, obviously. Like, and look, there could be a couple games in there where he gets hot and they use him. Do we get a Furk trade request though?
I mean, he'll mention it once and then he'll never bring it up again. So who knows? We might. I would guess probably he's on the last year of a deal, right? He's on the last year of a contract. I would guess. I mean that would increase the chances of it, right? Because he wants a chance to show himself before he can get out there and get his next contract. I feel like once you've done it twice publicly, like you kind of have to resign yourself to the fact that you're not good enough for a trade request. I feel like that might be where we're at, but who knows? Could be. And look, like I said, I enjoy watching Furk play. From the big shoes to the bright shoes to the completely unnecessary behind the back passes to the fact that he will have one game, every other week or so where he just gets unconscionably hot and gives you a chance. He's fun to watch. He drives me insane because defense. But he's fun to watch, but I don't think he's going to be on the Especially even with like Danny Green looking like, if Danny Green took 4 steps back last year, he might have gotten 2 of them back. Now, in the aggregate, he's still a couple steps behind where he was the last time he played for the Sixers, but I think he's looked better than I expected.
I trust him to stand in the right spot on defense more than Ferk.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. All right. Next one here from Stuart London. He's basically just asking when we think the Harden drama finally ends. And we sort of touched on this. Didn't spend too much time earlier talking about it. But do you feel like this is something that could be done by the time the regular season starts? Or is this waiting till, I won't say a trade deadline, but after December 15th when like a quarter of the league becomes eligible to be traded?
My guess is it'll take longer, but you never know with Spurs teams. I guess it's like what we said. It's day to day, right? I don't exactly know what the next day will bring. I think Harden and maybe even the Sixers. I mean, you said Daryl actually might want him to play hard for the entire year. That's the ideal scenario. I certainly, unless the Clippers up their offer, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah. No, I agree. Look, I don't think there's any real reason for the Clippers to up their offer now when they're the only team bidding. I don't see another team getting into the sweepstakes until something changes, and nothing really changes until games are played. And I don't see Daryl giving in until the Clippers feel like they have a little bit of pressure to get something done. And I just can't see, look, maybe one team just completely, and that's probably why Clippers are getting desperate, like we said earlier. They don't want to really up their offer, but they want to find a way to make it more appealing for Daryl. So that's why they're trying to engage with other teams about pick swaps or flipping that 1 pick into 2. But unless a team just completely overvalues that 2028 pick from the Clippers, there's really no avenue for anything to change significantly. And without it changing, don't take this as reporting for sure. This is just speculation and guessing.
Don't aggregate them.
Do not aggregate me. I think that most likely is this goes on until December. I'll say December because that's when a significant trade restriction lifts. We'll see. All right. One more here from Ronald Albright, and then we will try to cut this one off. Basically, he says that we all know Morey wants a player that wants to either win now, or that can help them win now, or draft assets that can be turned into that. But his question is basically who is available, what difference maker player is available? And the answer to that is none. I mean, maybe Brogdon, but there's no real reason they would ever want to do that, Portland. He's the only one you would think is on the market right now. And that's honestly not good news for the Sixers because Portland's not interested in James Harden, but the Clippers might be interested in Brogdon. Now, again, it's good news right now that the ESPN report said the Clippers prefer Harden, so maybe that alleviates that somewhat. But Brogdon being the only other significant name on the trade market right now is overall a bad thing. But to his point, there's just teams do not want to make moves at this point. And that changes sometimes when you have someone like Dame, and where teams feel like they have to get in on Dame. So that creates a trade market that otherwise wouldn't be there. And then you saw a Drew Holiday trade that was sort of like a follow-up to that. But without that, I mean, I think one of the big takeaways is that there's just not, when someone like James Harden is on the market, you expect there to be a wide, we always say that the team with a star has the leverage almost always because they have the player that other teams want. Well, right now it doesn't look like other teams want James Harden. So you can't create that leverage out of nowhere. And there's just not an appetite for teams to make trades right now. Yeah. I'd love to give you some optimism that this will be resolved and we can be a normal basketball team and talk about something other than James Harden. Because trust me, we talk about this team 5 hours a week. I would love to talk about something other than James Harden. I just don't think it's in the short-term future. And again, I might be completely wrong. I might be reading these tea leaves wrong. But I would be a little bit surprised.
I'm just picturing Harden balling out for the first month and just angry press conferences after every game.
Yeah. Calling Daryl Morey a liar after everyone.
Yes, I had a triple-double tonight, but Daryl Morey is a liar.
Right. I mean, I could talk myself into that. That would be fun. That's the way he should. We talked about this earlier. He should go scorched earth on Daryl and play hard to convince other teams to trade for him. That's his path now.
He was like, that was a great set play for the game winner that Nick Nurse drew up. Really enjoying playing for him. Get me the hell out of here. I hate Daryl Morey.
Right. Maybe you should work for James Harden, be his speechwriter.
I think he's okay. The thing with James is even when he's happy, it's very monotone.
Yeah. It's monotone, and then you got the beard, so you don't really see the facial expressions. So he looks like he's always like, I don't even want to say pissed off, always just kind of like aloof and just not very emotive. When it doesn't seem like that's actually the case, but because, of the way he kind of has a little Bobby Abreu in the way he plays, and then he has the beard, and he doesn't really like to talk much, so you don't really get the personality that I'm sure is there, and that everyone you talk to says is there, and that the emotion is there. You don't really see that on the court.
I'm just picturing it. Joel, unbelievable defensive game from him tonight. Love that guy. MVP. Get me the hell out of here.
Yeah. I just wonder if some of that then comes like, does he start being a bad teammate? Because he has in the past. We mentioned all the time that he is, close with his teammates now. But if he starts developing bad habits, does that then impact the locker room? That's when things could change.
I almost think his habits have been so ingrained for such a long time that I'm not sure they can get worse if, he's aloof. Like, he's always been aloof. He's always like...
Oh, no, I mean like taking plays off, like the completely unnecessary cross-court behind-the-back passes that he had in Portland or in Houston, stuff like that.
I get that. But in fairness, he always takes plays off. It's James Harden.
No,
when he won the MVP, he took plays off.
It's true. All right, I think that is... And Ronald bringing up OG, just a real quick, I think that's the one to watch. Like, there's so much going on in Toronto and so much uncertainty with the future of that franchise, and so much... Seems like there might be a little bit of friction with OG. That's the one to watch. I just don't think we're there yet. That's one where maybe in December or January or February, that could be one of the players available. I don't think he is right now, though. We'll see. All right. Thank you, Rich, for jumping on, and we'll be sure to talk to you soon. And, of course, if you can, subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to get notifications. We go live 5 days a week. We'd love to have you live in the chat to converse with you. But take care.
We all silly like the mayor.